She was a bright young teenager who fell hard for an older man.
He was charming and handsome.
She was crazy about him.
They look as they're in a perfect relationship.
But behind their smiling faces, trouble was brewing.
Nobody knew about this secret side of what she was doing.
He had been in trouble with the law.
She was going down a dangerous path.
And when she suddenly disappears, everyone fears the worst.
All the calls went unanswered.
Her family began to get alarmed.
They were taken aback.
Did she take off with her new boyfriend?
The family tell the detectives that she has become more rebellious.
He was living that type of lifestyle that would drive any parent crazy.
Or had her rebellious streak made her easy prey for a sadistic killer?
She would post these ads on the internet.
He had no regard for human life.
With a truth so shocking, no one saw it coming.
There was a second body and a second murder.
Somebody's going to stand up and go, he's a serial killer. Do you want that on you?
She walked right into the lion's den without even realizing it.
I felt the devil. I honestly felt the devil.
Monday, February 11th, 2013. It's a frigid winter in St. Paul, one of Minnesota's twin cities.
The two main cities here are Minneapolis and St. Paul. They're basically sister cities.
Minneapolis considered the big town, St. Paul, the smaller community.
We have 4 seasons, but the wintertime, it gets very cold.
It's not uncommon to have temperatures in the single digits or even below 0.
As the sun sets on St. Paul, those frigid temperatures have one young mother worried about her 18-year-old daughter, Brittany Clardy.
Brittany had gone out that morning to run some errands, but by nightfall, she still hadn't returned.
Brittany was living at home at the time with her family, her sister, her mom, her dad. They started to wonder, where's Brittany? What is she doing? And that's when the worry started.
She just isn't like her.
It's cold outside. It's getting dark. Immediately, your heart jumps and you think the worst case scenario, something bad happened.
Brittany's mother tries to reach her daughter by phone, but all of her calls go to voicemail.
She made calls. She received absolutely nothing. Not a word from Brittany.
Come on, baby. Pick up the phone.
She was frantically calling different people. Have you seen Brittany? Have you heard from Brittany?
Consumed with worry, Brittany's parents stay up late into the night, calling her phone over and over again, until they finally get an answer.
Brittany? Is that you?
Imagine calling, trying to reach her, and all of a sudden, the phone answers. Wow, I've got her on the phone. It's her.
Brittany?
But the excitement is short-lived.
Hello? Hello?
She could hear muffled sounds in the background, like something's going on.
There was just a ruffling in the background with nobody talking.
Then all of a sudden, the phone was disconnected.
What'd she say?
The line just went dead.
What do you mean the line went dead?
It just went dead.
Now the family is convinced that something is seriously wrong with Brittany.
Growing up in St. Paul, Brittany Clardy was raised by protective parents.
Brittany's parents made sure to keep her and her siblings away from the inner city violence that occurred, along with drugs.
This is a family that wanted the best for their children.
Shielded from many of the harsh realities her peers faced, Brittany was able to shine as a student.
Brittany was a very responsible young girl. Her parents and her family trusted her extensively. She had done well in school. She had done well at jobs.
She was very goal-oriented, looking into the future, already working, keeping herself busy.
She had a bright future ahead of her.
After graduating high school, Brittany's confidence in what she could accomplish only grew larger.
Brittany had plans to become a pharmacist.
She was applying to colleges and looking forward to starting a career.
It was around this time that Brittany started hanging out with a handsome young man from the neighborhood, Braxton Green.
She met Braxton in December of 2011, and then they ended up going on their first date on Christmas Eve.
Thanks for letting me steal you away from your family tonight.
They see me enough as it is.
Brittany and Braxton became serious very quickly. He was charming and handsome and swept her off her feet.
Every time he moved, every time he walked, every time he talked, it was Braxton, it's Braxton.
Before long, Braxton became Brittany's new priority.
Brittany floods her social media feeds with Braxton's picture, and they look as if they're in a perfect relationship.
All right, ready? Smile.
Brittany showed off, here's my boyfriend, here we are, had no qualms about it. It was her and Braxton.
Damn, we look good.
But there was one problem. Brittany's parents didn't approve of her new boyfriend.
Have you seen this?
Braxton was a 23-year-old man.
When they first met, Brittany was only 17 years old, and her parents didn't like the fact that she was hanging out with a grown man while she was underage.
Didn't matter to Brittany. She was in love with him. She was crazy about him. Her parents couldn't break that.
Now, Brittany is 18 years old, so she feels more free. I am not going to listen to you, Mom. I am an adult now.
This was the man of her dreams.
Head over heels is a good way to describe it.
But now, Brittany Clardy has vanished, and her parents are beginning to fear the worst after an alarming phone call.
When Brittany finally appeared to pick up the phone after several attempts to reach her, there was no voice, just some muffled noises, and then the phone disconnected.
Subsequent calls go straight to voicemail.
This made Brittany's family very, very concerned.
Brittany's parents decide to check in with her boyfriend, Braxton Green, to see if she's with him.
Hello?
Have you talked to Brittany?
You sound worried.
We are worried. We haven't spoken to her since this morning.
He told her, I have not seen her.
He said that he did have plans with Brittany for earlier that day, but Brittany never showed up.
Brittany's parents wait up all night, hoping she'll return their calls or show up on their doorstep.
I just don't understand.
They had given her the whole night to reach out, but Brittany had not reached out.
By morning, they decide to involve the authorities.
So I understand you're both here about your daughter.
When Brittany went missing, her family contacted the St. Paul Police Department.
She left home yesterday around 11:30.
That's right.
At first, police are reluctant to get involved.
They simply said that she was a runaway or that she would come back and not to worry.
The family, of course, is trying to convince them, hey, this is a very responsible young girl. We need to take this seriously.
And Brittany's parents also provide police with their first suspect.
The family did inform the police of Brittany's relationship with Braxton.
Their theory is Brittany's boyfriend may have something to do with this.
"18-year-old Brittany Clardy was in the prime of her life and head over heels for her new boyfriend, Braxton Green.
Braxton, this 23-year-old man, sweeps her off her feet. Braxton is charming, good-looking, and handsome.
Brittany was madly in love with Braxton.
But now, after leaving her parents' home on a chilly morning in the winter of 2013, Brittany has disappeared without a trace.
When she left home, it was 11:30, and by 1 to 1:30, the phone calls had absolutely stopped. There was nothing else.
That is, I would say, a mother's worst nightmare. When your child says, I'm going out to run some errands, and then an hour passes, another hour passes. Next thing you're talking evening.
When she didn't appear at home, mother then called her in as missing.
Brittany's family tells investigators they already have suspicions about what may have happened to her.
They told them they strongly suspected her boyfriend, Braxton.
The family suggested that he may have something to do with her disappearance.
I never liked him. What don't you like about him?
They said Braxton was a bad influence and that he was leading Brittany in the wrong direction.
He had been in trouble with the law. He had a child by another relationship. Not the ideal person that they would want their daughter to date.
Brittany's parents are also concerned about the way Braxton treats their daughter.
Braxton demonstrated a controlling behavior. When Brittany did not respond to text messages or phone calls, he would become really angry.
He didn't have a full-time job. I mean, he was just always hanging out all the time. He would say, go buy me this, go get me that.
He's a bum, you know? And he's got her doing all this stuff she has no business doing.
Braxton liked to party, which Brittany also joined him in that lifestyle.
You know, Brittany generally lived a very clean lifestyle as a teenager growing up. And having Braxton in her life, he introduced her to partying. He introduced her to the alcohol. He got her into smoking weed.
Brittany's parents had worked so hard to keep her out of that life, but all of that went out the window when she got involved with Braxton.
She started to change. She became more abrasive. She became more confrontational. All of the stuff that goes with drugs and alcohol trickled into her life.
Brittany's parents say they wanted to let their daughter make her own decisions, but they eventually felt the need to intervene.
They had taken steps to try to convince her that maybe she should end the relationship.
I never liked
Yet Brittany wasn't willing to listen.
Regardless of what mom says, she was in love with Braxton.
I just know he had something to do with this. That's the only thing I can think of.
At the end of the interview, St. Paul police officially declare Brittany a missing person.
We'll be sure to keep you updated every step of the way.
They also put an ATL on that vehicle as well, attempt to locate. So if anyone were to run her car, if they were driving around, then that would come back as a hit.
While the investigators wait for leads to come in, they reach out to their sole person of interest, Braxton Green.
Hello?
Is this Braxton?
Yes, who's this?
I'm calling
From the St. Paul Police Department, in reference to...
Brittany Clardy.
And we said, hey, we need your help. We're looking for her.
Do you have a moment to come down this evening and talk about this?
To detectives' surprise, Braxton refuses.
Listen, I really don't have much to tell you.
He was very evasive. I mean, he sent red flags just to flying. Yeah, I don't know where she is either. I've been looking for her. She won't answer her phone. The last I heard, she said she was going to go take a nap somewhere. What we found and discovered is that he had an arrest warrant out for him already in a separate domestic-related case. It was either to do with childcare or a probation violation or something, but he was being looked for to be placed under arrest.
With Braxton nowhere to be found, for days the investigation hits a standstill. But on February 21st, 10 days after Brittany disappeared, investigators catch a huge break in the case.
Thank you.
The Clardy family received a letter that the car Brittany had been driving was at this impound lot in Columbia Heights.
The tow company also informs them that the car was found in an apartment complex in Brooklyn Park, which is 20 miles from where the family resides.
Investigators immediately head to the impound lot, eager to search the vehicle.
Detectives quickly discover there's a large number of items piled up on that footwell area in the back seat. So very meticulously, they begin to remove these items so they can document each one as they go.
Brittany had an iPhone. They didn't find the iPhone, but they did find 2 burner phones.
We also found what was called a vanilla Visa card, and more prominently, a bed sheet that had a very distinct pattern to it.
Underneath the sheet, they find something that stops them dead in their tracks.
Well, we moved the belongings around in the back seat and said, oh my gosh.
There's a body in the back of the car.
10 days after Brittany Clardy disappeared, detectives have tracked her vehicle to an impound lot in the St. Paul suburb of Columbia Heights.
This was the car that was reported as being connected to Brittany as being a missing person.
Inside, they make a disturbing discovery.
Very quickly, they can see there's somebody's body in the back seat.
The body is nearly frozen solid.
They get so cold in Minnesota, and that in essence kind of freezes the crime scene or freezes it in time.
It had been below freezing for many days leading up to her discovery, which gives us the ability to preserve some of that physical evidence that's still there. Some of the wounds haven't degraded. The body hasn't begun to decompose at all because it's been frozen.
The body is carefully removed from the vehicle and transported to the medical examiner's office, where they confirm it belongs to Brittany Clardy.
Once her identity was confirmed, that was very difficult news for her family to grapple with. They were still hoping that she was out there alive somewhere.
The parents are just totally devastated. Our daughter's gone.
Their pain is only worsened by the discovery that Brittany suffered a violent death.
The medical examiner found some ligature around the neck, that she had possibly been choked or strangled. They also found many blows to the head.
Brittany had somewhere between 15 and 17 blows to the back of her head. It was likely from a hammer.
Now more than ever, detectives want to speak with Brittany's elusive boyfriend, Braxton Green.
They had to talk to Braxton. We got to bring this guy in. We got to talk to him.
As patrol officers continue scouring the city for Braxton, detectives work on submitting a records request for the burner phones found in Brittany's car.
After locating the burner phones, it did set off some red flags for the detectives. They are aware that people involved in illegal activity are prone to use burner cell phones.
The vanilla Visa found in the vehicle also gives detectives pause.
That vanilla Visa is one of those visas where you can use it and no one knows who you are. Why would you need such a product?
Before detectives can answer that question, they get the news they've been waiting for.
Lo and behold, we got notification the boyfriend was arrested. They finally found him.
They were able to finally take him into custody, and they took him to the police station for questioning.
Under questioning, Braxton tells detectives the same thing he told them on the phone, that he has no idea what happened to Brittany.
I already told you everything I know.
He told them I had nothing to do with her disappearance. I have nothing to do with it.
He was denying it.
He tried to make it clear to the police that he did love Brittany. He said he really cared about her and that he would not do anything to hurt her.
When was the last time you saw her?
It was the night before she went missing. Then the next day she called me while she was out running around.
Brittany told him that she was tired and was going to go to bed and take a nap and would see him later in the day. And
We made plans to hang out that night, but a few hours went by and I didn't hear anything. I called her, but she wasn't answering.
He denies knowing about where she would have been that day. He denied having anything to do with her disappearance.
When it becomes clear that Braxton isn't going to offer up a confession, detectives try a different tactic.
They kept asking him, okay, if you didn't do anything to her, do you have anything that you know of that was going on in Brittany's life that would have led to her possibly being murdered?
We found burner phones and a disposable Visa in Brittany's car. Now, what can you tell me about that?
Police kept pressuring and pushing. That's when he told them something that they never thought of.
We did not expect this in any way, shape, or form.
Braxton told them that Brittany had engaged in online prostitution.
After 10 days of searching for missing Minnesota teenager Brittany Clardy, detectives made a disturbing discovery: the young woman's dead body in the back seat of her abandoned vehicle.
She had been strangled. She was struck in the head with a blunt object.
She was brutally murdered.
Now, less than 24 hours later, police have tracked down their prime suspect, Brittany's 23-year-old boyfriend, Braxton Green.
Braxton had refused to come in and speak with detectives. Now they had him in custody, and he was denying any involvement in this crime.
However, Braxton has admitted something else to the detectives, something they never could have imagined.
He said Brittany had been posting ads on sexual service websites and was engaging in sexual relations with clients for money.
Police find the claim hard to believe.
And that came as a big surprise to the investigators.
It just didn't fit her profile. Didn't fit anything about her.
But Braxton insists he's telling the truth.
Were you pimping her out?
Hell no. I didn't even like that she was doing it. But she wanted the money.
Working in a recreation center, the pay wasn't just enough, and she wanted to buy things. She needed some extra cash, so she started thinking, how can I do it?
I don't feel like the prostitution is indicative of like who she was or her character. I think it was more, this was her first stab at independence and making her own decisions for herself.
She went on this one website a lot called Backpage or something like that.
The detectives are familiar with Backpage. At the time, it had become a notorious site for prostitution and sex trafficking.
People would go on there and say that these are the things they're willing to do for this amount of money.
Braxton said Brittany would make calls with those possible clients through her burner phones, and that's how she would engage in customers.
At first, Brittany wasn't offering sex.
He started off where she would just do massages, but then she wanted the money you got for doing other stuff.
Although he didn't approve of what she was doing, Braxton says he would sometimes accompany Brittany when she met up with a client.
He admitted to police that at times he would go out on some of those calls with Brittany, and he would sit outside and wait for her in the car or whatever. It's a safety measure, make sure nothing bad happened.
Some of these guys were sketchy. I didn't want her getting hurt.
Do you know if she met with any of these clients around the time she went missing?
I don't know, but she was talking about needing money, so I wouldn't be surprised.
By the end of the interview, detectives are starting to believe that Braxton is telling the truth.
He was very cooperative. He handed over his phone, all his information.
You are free to go.
Braxton's phone, it was pinging off of towers that were not anywhere near the location of where Brittany's body was found.
He's in a different part of the Twin Cities metro area, not even close. Long story short is that we came out of the interview satisfied, thinking that he was not involved in her disappearance or in her death.
Now, the detectives have a new theory about what happened to Brittany.
They were beginning to think her murder might have been related to her activities as an escort.
Our eyebrows raised and thought, well, maybe there's something here.
Detectives decide to canvass the apartment complex in Brooklyn Park where Brittany's car had been impounded.
The police had great reason to believe that Brittany was last alive, perhaps in Brooklyn Park.
So the investigation was extremely extensive. I mean, we were canvassing the area, pulling cameras in the area.
They knocked on doors all over that location, but no one remembered seeing Brittany or even knew who she was.
However, detectives make more progress when they get their hands on the data from Brittany's burner phones.
These records, they're voluminous. There's many dozens, if not hundreds of pages. What they find is in the last few hours of the afternoon of February 11th, Brittany's got some contacts with an Atlanta area code number.
It was a phone that was actually purchased and registered in the name of Alberto Palmer.
It gave them the key to this entire investigation.
For nearly 3 weeks, Minnesota detectives have been working to untangle the final hours of Brittany Clardy's life.
Investigators sought the records of Brittany's phone, the text messages, who's been calling her, who she's been calling.
Even though she was deceased, in a way, she was kind of helping us solve this case through her phone records.
Now, detectives think they found the key to solving Brittany's murder buried in the call log of one of her burner phones.
Police discovered that Brittany had been in contact with a 25-year-old man named Alberto Palmer on the day that she disappeared.
There were several phone calls and messages that took place in the early afternoon hours of February 11th, even going back a couple days before that, about potentially Brittany providing some massage services to Mr. Palmer.
We did some work on the name Alberto Palmer. We found out that Mr. Palmer had a warrant out for his arrest out of a city called Chamblee, Georgia, and that's just outside Atlanta.
The reason for the warrant immediately sets off alarm bells.
He's wanted there for violent attacks against sex workers.
There were 3 different assault cases out of Chamblee, Georgia, involving Alberto, all 3 of which were females that were involved in prostitution and had gone over to his residence. And in all 3 cases, he had physically assaulted these females.
Had he done the same to Brittany Clardy? When investigators subpoena Alberto's phone records, they learn that he's recently been in communication with a family member who lives near where Brittany's car was found.
It was a few blocks from where the car was located, so now we have an address in Brooklyn Park.
He had actually ordered pizza to that address, I believe, on the 11th, around where Brittany Clardy was murdered.
So now we're very curious.
However, more recent cell phone pings suggest that Alberto may have left Brooklyn Park in the days since Brittany's disappearance.
Alberto's phone number is going to a house in Woodbury, Minnesota. Brooklyn Park is on the west side. They're like 25, 30 miles apart.
So it's complicated the case a little bit because we had 2 separate locations. We had to plan basically simultaneous warrants at both locations.
On March 6th,
We're able to pretty much hit the Brooklyn Park location and the Woodbury location pretty close to the same time.
They do what's called the knock and talk. We're just going to knock on the door, see who answers, and see if they know anything.
in Brooklyn Park, Alberto Palmer's family member comes to the door.
Hi, can I help you?
Yes, ma'am. We're with the St. Paul Police Department.
As the police talk to her, they find out, Alberto was in fact at that place on February 11th, the day that Brittany disappeared.
Alberto's family member agrees to show police the room where he had stayed.
Sure, come on in.
Thank you.
There appeared to be a cleanup inside as there were large bleach spots in one of the bedrooms.
She says, oh, yeah, Then there was that day that I came home and he said he had spilled Kool-Aid and he made me help him clean it up.
So literally just pouring bleach on spots in the carpet.
Investigators don't think the stains were made by Kool-Aid.
They fairly easily pull up the carpet to reveal the blood that had soaked through into the subfloor. And at this point, they know this is likely the crime scene. This is likely where Brittany Clardy was killed.
Investigators' suspicions are all but confirmed when they show Alberto's family member a photo of the bedsheet they found covering Brittany's body.
It was a very distinctive pattern on the sheet.
It was a picture of a bed sheet that was hers that she knew was in their apartment.
Oh my God, yeah, that's my bed sheet. That's it.
The sheet that was used to cover Brittany Clardy in the car, we've now been able to trace back to coming from that residence.
Meanwhile, police officers across town are able to take Alberto Palmer into custody at the home in Woodbury, Minnesota, where his cell phone last pinged.
We were able to arrest the suspect without incident.
He had his backpack with him right where he was arrested. In his backpack was Brittany's iPhone.
Investigators immediately transport Alberto back to the station for questioning.
He's brought to the Anoka County Sheriff's Department where he gives an interview.
Alberto begins the interview by revealing some forthcoming information about his past.
I was diagnosed bipolar.
Okay.
I was going through therapy for over 10 years for anger problems, as well as I've been in a mental institution 3 times. Stressed out.
Alberto tells police he didn't do anything to Brittany Clardy, at least not that he can remember.
I tend to black out. It's hard for me to just remember things.
Is it black out and then do things that you would never dream of doing in real life?
Exactly.
For several hours, he denies knowing anything to do with Brittany's murder or even knowing Brittany.
But as the interrogation heats up, Alberto starts to tell a different story.
We would give him details. Then it was like jogging his memory of what had taken place.
I need you to really dig deep into your noggin, and I want you to come out with the rest of it, because you know what happened.
I mean, Detective, I'm telling you what I remember.
Eventually, he acknowledges that he had solicited Brittany for sexual services. He acknowledged they had some degree of sex.
And finally, after hours of unrelenting interrogation, Alberto makes a shocking confession.
When I realized, what you just did, I honestly felt the devil inside of me.
Nearly a month after 18-year-old Brittany Clardy vanished, Minnesota police have arrested Alberto Palmer for killing her and hiding her body.
During the interview, he was giving some information, but not coming clean with all the details of what had occurred.
Okay. All this, I'm stressed out, and just a lot of times, I tend to forget things. I tend to black out.
He had remembered only bits and pieces.
But when Detective LaFamme confronts Alberto with the blood evidence they found in his family member's Brooklyn Park apartment, he starts to open up.
It's very, very clear from what happened up in Brooklyn Park that there was a lot of effort put into cleaning the room up, okay? There was a lot of effort to put this young lady in the car and to cover her up.
According to Alberto, he was experiencing one of his blackouts until it was too late.
First thing I saw was when I was putting on a car start.
Okay.
Honestly, the only thing I remember is going in the car.
Alberto tells Detective LaFamme it was like he was possessed by an evil spirit.
When I realized, what you just did, I felt the devil. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm satanic or nothing, but just I felt the devil.
Yeah. What else was the devil doing?
Alberto claims he doesn't remember anything else that happened that night. But when investigators resume questioning the next morning, they have a breakthrough.
In our second day of interviewing, Sergeant Russ had a go at him. I had been the nice detective, and Russ went in and took a little bit of a different approach, which was really effective.
I've dealt with a lot of cases similar to yours as far as, possessions and people getting possessed by the devil and poltergeist like that, right? I get it, dude. You can get possessed, and happens to you, and you're like, what the f am I doing? I get it, and I've dealt with it, and that's kind of why I deal with a lot of people, and I came in and try and give you one last shot here, right? Mike's a decent guy, but he's not real good with the being possessed. You know what I'm saying? So what happened? You got a pen? You want to write it? I'm sure you get. I'll write, man. All right. Tell me it's recorded.
Alberto admits that on February 11th, while his family member was at work, he invited Brittany over to have sex.
He says that at some point they began to tussle, I believe were his words.
As we was having sex, it's like we started to fight. And as we fighting, it's like we tussling in the room. I'm dead.
What are you doing? Get off me!
He describes that he choked her.
I choked her to the point where she was just laying there.
He choked her to the point of unconsciousness, believing she was dead. And while he was gathering himself, realized that she was still alive.
Alberto says he knew he couldn't let Brittany leave after what happened between them.
So I ran in the kitchen and was looking in the drawer.
He went through the kitchen drawers, found a hammer, brought a hammer up to the room.
As I ran back in the room, she was trying to get past me. We still tussling again. So I hit her. I just kept hitting her. And it's like I couldn't stop.
He couldn't give an exact amount of times, but brutally hit her on the head numerous times until she wasn't moving anymore.
Once Brittany was dead, Alberto says he came up with a plan to get rid of her body.
The only thing I think is now I have to get this away from you. And that's when I put it in the car.
He admitted to taking the car up to the apartment lot and walking back, disposing of the keys on the way.
Immediately following Alberto's stunning confession, police charge him with first-degree murder.
You made a mistake. You're going to stand up and be accountable and responsible for that.
Based off of his previous altercations in Georgia and then him coming to Minnesota and doing the same thing, it seemed like he definitely was developing into somewhat of a psychopathic killer.
It was a relief to have him off the streets, so he couldn't hurt any more young women.
But before Alberto stands trial, investigators on the opposite side of the Mississippi River make a grisly discovery.
In May of 2013, a body had been found in the trunk of a car that was in an impound lot in Minneapolis.
When word of the events reaches detectives in St. Paul, they're struck by the similarities to Brittany's murder.
It was eerily similar to the Clarity case, so right away, Alberto was kind of a person of interest.
The new victim is identified as 24-year-old Clarissa Cook, a young woman who lived in Brooklyn Park.
She had also been advertising escort services on Backpage.com. And upon doing some search warrants on her phone number, we were able to find out that Alberto was the last person that Clarissa's phone had any communication with.
Crime scene evidence eventually reveals that Clarissa was killed in the same apartment where Brittany Clardy's life was taken.
Blood samples did come back to Clarissa.
Armed with this new evidence, prosecutors believe they have what they need to convict Alberto of both murders. But to avoid a painful trial for the victims' families, they decide to offer him a plea deal.
One of the things we talked with the Clardy family about is anytime you go to trial, if somebody's convicted, that's not the end of it. A conviction will automatically go to the Supreme Court on appeal. The family didn't want to go through that emotional roller coaster.
In exchange for pleading guilty to the murders of Brittany Clardy and Clarissa Cook, Alberto manages to avoid a life sentence.
What this means is Mr. Palmer serves 30 years before the possibility of parole. The minute he's paroled, if he ever is, he begins his 40-year sentence for the murder of Brittany Clardy. So likely Mr. Palmer will never be released from custody.
For the loved ones of Alberto Palmer's victims, it's a bittersweet conclusion to an unthinkable tragedy.
Both Brittany and Clarissa were very young females. They had their whole entire lives ahead of them.
It's sad and very tragic what happened.
Brittany was a very responsible girl. Brittany did all the right things, and nobody knew about this secret side of what she was doing. Her family didn't as well. It can happen to anyone. So all people, all parents need to be really vigilant.
Brittany is all of us. I think we all need to be really honest about how vulnerable we all are in any given day or moment.
You don't know who you're meeting off the streets, so you got to be
if
careful.
he had harmed Tanisha. The psychological pressure of his hidden guilt, combined with the presence of a trusted community. The figure caused Timothy to break down. He confessed that when Tanisha had tried to leave, he had flown into a jealous rage and strangled her to death. Timothy claimed that he had subsequently placed her body in a dumpster at the rear of the apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. On Wednesday, March 21st, 2007, at approximately 5:30 in the afternoon, the investigators, accompanied by Quannell X and Timothy Shepard, drove to the apartment complex. But when they peered inside the designated dumpster, it was completely empty. The Waste Management Services had emptied the container recently, meaning Tanisha's remains were likely lost within a massive municipal landfill. A search of the facility would cost upwards of $500,000. And after consulting with the sheriff, Tanisha's family made the agonizing decision to spare the county the expense, accepting that her physical form might never be recovered in its entirety. Following his arrest, Timothy Shepard invoked his right to legal counsel and refused to speak further. To secure a conviction without a body, the prosecution required scientific evidence. Crime scene investigators returned to Timothy's apartment with advanced forensic tools, conducting a meticulous search for microscopic traces of the crime. Their diligence was rewarded with a series of horrifying discoveries. Within the kitchen garbage disposal, forensic specialists recovered fragments of human tooth enamel, which DNA analysis subsequently matched to Tanisha. Near the outdoor patio where the grills had been placed, investigators located charred bone fragments. While the heat had degraded the bone structure too severely for a definitive genetic profile, the presence of these remains combined with the tooth enamel in the garbage disposal, the intense chemical cleaning, and the neighbor testimonies allowed investigators to reconstruct a terrifying sequence of events. Timothy had not merely killed Tanisha, he had dismembered and incinerated her body in his smoker to completely erase the evidence of his crime. On September 29, 2008, the trial of the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard commenced. The prosecution faced the immense hurdle of presenting a homicide case without a complete body, relying on circumstantial evidence and scientific fragments. They argued that Timothy's motive was rooted in absolute control, preferring to destroy Tanisha rather than allow her to pursue a brighter, independent future with another man. The defense argued that the state's case was based on theory and lacked definitive physical proof of a murder. However, the prosecution presented powerful testimonies, including that of Quan Nell X, who recounted Timothy's confession. The most shocking testimony came from the defendant's own cousin, Nicholas Shepard. Nicholas revealed to the court that Timothy had previously made chilling statements, asserting that if Tanisha ever attempted to leave him, he would cut her up and boil her. The jury deliberated for 24 hours before returning a verdict of guilty. During the sentencing phase, Timothy Shepard chose to take the stand in his own defense, attempting to mitigate his punishment by claiming the death was an accident. He alleged that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife during their argument, and that he had grabbed her neck in self-defense, subsequently blacking out. However, when the prosecution confronted him about his actions after her death, Timothy coldly corrected the prosecutor, stating that he had not used a standard barbecue pit, but had instead placed her remains inside a smoker. This profound lack of empathy and the grotesque nature of the cover-up sealed his fate. The jury rejected his claims of self-defense and sentenced Timothy Shepard to 99 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
Wow.
The sentence ensured that Timothy would never again pose a threat to society. It could not restore the brilliant future of Tanisha Stewart, whose promising life was tragically cut short by the ultimate expression of possessive control. Part 2. The Shadow of the Pulpit. In the city of Raleigh, North Carolina, another young life of immense promise was unfolding. Latrice Curtis was a 21-year-old business administration student at North Carolina Central University. She was the only girl in a family of protective brothers, cherished by her parents and admired for her vibrant personality, her intelligence, and her warm, approachable nature. In her first semester of college, she had met Darren Curtis, a respectful and mature accounting student who had previously served in the National Guard. The two fell deeply in love, and within a year, they were married. By January of 2008, Latrice and Darren had been married for 9 months, living in a cozy apartment and working hard toward their academic and professional goals. But on the morning of Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, at approximately 7:30, commuters traveling along Interstate 540 spotted a figure lying in the grass beside the roadway. Emergency responders arrived to discover the body of a young woman who had been brutally and repeatedly stabbed. The crime scene was horrific. The victim had sustained over 40 stab wounds to her face, neck, chest, and torso. Her jugular vein and carotid artery had been severed, and her vocal cords had been cut. The sheer violence of the attack suggested an intense, highly personal rage. Nearby, her hand showed significant defensive wounds, indicating she had fought desperately for her life. Darren Curtis, driving to work on that very highway, noticed the backed-up traffic and the police tape. A half-mile further down the road, he spotted a white vehicle that perfectly resembled his wife's car. Overcome with panic, he returned to the scene where detectives confirmed his worst fears. The victim was Latrice. The investigation began with an examination of Latrice's abandoned vehicle. The interior showed clear signs of a violent struggle with a broken center console and blood on the driver's side door. Forensic teams collected DNA samples from the steering wheel and the victim's fingernails, sending them to the state crime laboratory for urgent analysis. Detectives initially questioned Darren Curtis, examining his hands and arms for any signs of physical conflict, finding no injuries, and discovering no evidence of a struggle within their apartment or Darren's vehicle. Investigators cleared him of suspicion. However, the autopsy of Latrice's body revealed a critical clue. A condom was recovered from her vaginal canal with no physical injuries, indicating sexual assault. This suggested that Latrice had engaged in a recent consensual sexual encounter. Subpoenaed phone records revealed that in the hours leading up to her death, Latrice had exchanged numerous phone calls with a number belonging to Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent student and basketball player on the university campus, harboring serious aspirations of joining the National Basketball Association. When investigators contacted him, Stephen initially claimed they were merely classmates and friends. However, when presented with the phone records and the forensic findings, Stephen admitted to a passionate, secret sexual affair with Latrice. He explained that on the night of January 29th, Latrice had visited his residence. During their encounter, the condom had become lodged inside her, and despite their efforts, they could not retrieve it. Latrice left his home around 10 o'clock in the evening, intending to remove it at her own home. Afterward, Stephen claimed he drove to the apartment of his girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he stayed until 1 o'clock in the morning. He asserted that Latrice had repeatedly called his phone past midnight, expressing extreme anxiety about the possibility of becoming pregnant. To verify his account, detectives interviewed Stephen's roommate, a 43-year-old local pastor named Robert Reeves. Reeves, known to his congregation as the Bishop, was a highly charismatic motivational speaker and a respected figure in the local religious community. Reeves confirmed that Stephen rented a basement apartment in his home. He stated that on the night of the murder, he had seen Latrice's car parked outside before he left for a church service at 8:15 in the evening. When he returned at 11:30, both Stephen's and Latrice's vehicles were gone. Reeves also mentioned that Stephen had told him about the frantic late-night phone calls from Latrice regarding the condom, suggesting that Latrice was seeking a long-term relationship that Stephen did not want, potentially threatening his athletic career. This information initially cast a dark shadow of suspicion over Stephen Randolph. However, as detectives continued to probe, the narrative began to shift. A search of Stephen's apartment and vehicle yielded no physical evidence or weapons, and his girlfriend, Velma, adamantly defended his character. Velma also revealed that both she and Stephen had been subjected to a series of anonymous, threatening phone calls and text messages demanding that Stephen end his relationship with her. Furthermore, Stephen's vehicle had recently been targeted by an act of vandalism, with all 4 of his tires being slashed. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives regarding a routine traffic observation he had made on the night of the murder. At approximately 1:30 in the morning, Cooper had observed a disabled vehicle parked on the shoulder of Interstate 540, close to where Latrice's body was later found. Running the vehicle's registration, the trooper discovered it belonged to Pastor Robert Reeves. This discovery placed the pastor's car at the precise location of the homicide. During the estimated time of death, detectives immediately summoned Robert Reeves for further questioning. When asked why his vehicle was parked on the highway, Reeves denied being there, claiming he was home asleep and suggesting that Stephen Randolph must have borrowed his car. However, investigators noticed deep scratches and abrasions on the pastor's hands and arms. Reeves claimed he had sustained the injuries when he and Stephen fell while moving a heavy desk. When detectives questioned Stephen about this incident, Stephen denied that any such accident had occurred, stating they had not moved any furniture. More disturbingly, Stephen revealed a series of bizarre interactions with the pastor. He claimed that Reeves had repeatedly made inappropriate, highly personal inquiries about his sexual experiences and physical attributes. On one occasion, the pastor had offered to waive Stephen's monthly rent in exchange for sexual favors, an advance that Stephen had firmly rejected. Investigators subpoenaed the pastor's phone records, revealing that the blocked anonymous threats sent to Stephen and Velma had originated from Robert Reeves' personal cellular phone. It became clear that the outwardly respectable minister harbored a pathological, consuming obsession with his young roommate. Driven by intense jealousy, Reeves could not tolerate the idea of Stephen engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with women. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when the State Crime Laboratory completed its analysis of the DNA evidence. Deoxyribonucleic acid recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned vehicle matched Robert Reeves. The scientific evidence was irrefutable. The pastor had followed Latrice as she left his home, forced or persuaded her to pull over on the dark highway, and brutally ended her life in a frenzied attack born of displaced sexual frustration and jealousy. On September 29, 2009, Robert Reeves stood trial for first-degree murder. The prosecution presented a compelling case, detailing the pastor's secret life, his obsession with Stephen Randolph, and the digital and physical evidence connecting him to the crime scene. The defense attempted to deflect guilt back onto Stephen, pointing out that Stephen's DNA was recovered from under Latrice's fingernails. However, the prosecution successfully demonstrated that this genetic material was the natural result of their consensual encounter earlier that evening, whereas the pastor's DNA in her car and his physical injuries could not be innocently explained. On October 9, 2009, the jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The conviction exposed the profound hypocrisy of a man who used his position of spiritual authority to mask a predatory nature, leaving a young husband and a devoted family to mourn a life of infinite possibility. Part 3. The Final Call. In the quiet community of Little Elm, Texas, another complex psychological drama was unfolding within the ranks of local law enforcement. Wayne Irby was a 37-year-old police officer, a 6-year veteran of the force who was widely respected for his dedication, his friendly demeanor, and his commitment to community policing. Wayne was an outgoing individual, a devoted father, and a man who took pride in his uniform. In 2003, while patrolling his beat, Wayne noticed an open garage door at the home of Denise Miller. Denise was a 36-year-old divorced mother of 2 children, Whitney and Walter. She had recently moved to the area from Kansas City, Missouri, seeking a fresh start after her marriage ended. She was successful, managing a local liquor distribution business, and had purchased a beautiful home for her family. Wayne stopped to advise Denise to close her garage door to prevent thefts. Presenting his professional card, the brief interaction sparked a mutual attraction. Soon after, Wayne returned to ask her out, and the two began a passionate, exclusive relationship. Wayne bonded quickly with Denise's children, and on the surface, they appeared to be a happy, blended family. However, beneath the exterior of domestic bliss, deep-seated trust issues began to surface. Denise possessed an intensely jealous and possessive nature, frequently accusing Wayne of infidelity due to his friendly and outgoing interactions with women on his beat. In December of 2003, the tension erupted into physical violence. Denise showed up unannounced at Wayne's rental home, suspecting he was with another woman. When she observed a female associate's purse on the table, she banged on the door repeatedly. When Wayne opened the door to defuse the situation, a violent altercation ensued. Denise attacked Wayne, scratching his face and leaving him with a severe black eye. Although Denise initially filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne, she withdrew it the following day, admitting she had fabricated the allegations out of anger. Despite these warning signs of pathologically insecure attachment, the couple continued their relationship, eventually purchasing a home together in 2004. But the cycle of suspicion, constant monitoring, and dozens of daily phone calls continued to erode Wayne's patience. Feeling smothered and exhausted by the volatile dynamic, Wayne decided to move out, renting a separate home across town. When Denise lost her job in November of 2004, Wayne's compassionate nature led him to attempt a reconciliation to ensure her family's financial stability, but his decision was short-lived. By early December of 2004, Wayne realized the relationship could not be salvaged and resolved to end it permanently. On the morning of Friday, December 10th, 2004, Wayne failed to report for his scheduled 6 o'clock shift. This was entirely uncharacteristic of the dedicated officer, immediately raising alarms among his colleagues. His partner, Jerry Walker, and fellow officer, James Wynn, conducted a welfare check at Wayne's rental home. Upon entering the residence, they discovered Wayne's cellular phone and personal belongings in the kitchen. Moving down the hallway, Officer Wynn discovered Wayne Irby lying face down on the floor, deceased from a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry, suggesting Wayne had been caught entirely off guard by someone he trusted. As investigators from the Denton County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Rangers took control of the scene, they discovered that Wayne's .40 caliber service weapon was missing from his duty belt. Furthermore, Denise Miller and her vehicle were nowhere to be found, and her children reported they had not seen their mother since the previous evening. At Denise's home, detectives discovered a highly disturbing handwritten note in the master bedroom, which indicated she was contemplating ending her life. On the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home, investigators located a second note, written by Denise, which read, "I'm sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." This functioned as an explicit confession, suggesting a double tragedy had occurred. An all-points bulletin was issued for Denise Miller and her vehicle. At approximately 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, December 11th, 2004, the night manager of a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, received an urgent call from a guest room. Upon entering the room with maintenance staff, they discovered Denise lying on the floor, suffering from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to her head. Beside her lay a .25 caliber handgun. Inside the room, investigators also recovered Wayne's missing .40 caliber service pistol. Interestingly, the larger weapon had jammed because a bullet had been loaded into the chamber backward, preventing Denise from firing it. She had subsequently used the .25 caliber handgun, which belonged to her stepfather, to shoot herself above the eye. Denise was rushed to a trauma center, surviving the critical injury but sustaining severe brain damage. The bullet's trajectory left her partially paralyzed, blind in one eye, and suffering from profound retrograde amnesia. When questioned by Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy at her bedside, Denise appeared entirely disoriented. She remembered her children and her past, but she possessed absolutely no recollection of the shooting of Wayne Irby or her own subsequent suicide attempt. Psychologists and medical professionals noted that such amnesia could be a genuine physiological response to severe head trauma combined with the psychological defense mechanism of the brain blocking out an unspeakable act of violence. However, the legal system required accountability. Following months of intensive rehabilitation, Denise was declared competent to stand trial. On July 10th, 2006, the trial of the state of Texas versus Denise. Miller began. Denise appeared in the courtroom in a wheelchair, frail and visibly disabled, a sight that elicited sympathy from some observers. The defense argued that Wayne's death had been a tragic accident, pointing to a third note recovered from the hotel room in which Denise had written that she did not mean to hurt him and had panicked. However, the prosecution presented a powerful, science-based case to refute the accident theory. Forensic experts demonstrated that the .25 caliber handgun used to kill Wayne required between 4.5 and 5 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, making an accidental discharge highly improbable. Furthermore, ballistics confirmed that Wayne had been shot directly in the back of the head, a trajectory inconsistent with an accidental struggle. The prosecution argued that Denise, driven by a toxic mix of rejection and possessive rage, had traveled to Wayne's home with a loaded firearm, confronted him, and shot him when he turned his back to end the argument. Her failure to call for medical assistance, her flight from the scene, and her explicit written confessions further solidified her guilt. On July 12, 2006, after less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder, recognizing her severe physical limitations and the self-inflicted punishment she would carry for the rest of her days. The court spared her the death penalty, sentencing Denise Miller to 62 years in prison. It was a somber conclusion to a relationship that began with a protective gesture and ended in a senseless act of possessive violence. The lessons of truth. These three tragic narratives, though distinct in their locations and individuals, share a common, profound psychological thread. They illustrate the extreme danger of pathologically possessive love, where one partner's inability to accept the autonomy of another leads to a catastrophic escalation of violence. Timothy Shepard, Robert Reeves, and Denise Miller each acted out of a desperate, twisted need to control, possess, or eliminate the individuals who challenged their fragile egos. In Timothy Shepard, we observe the tragedy of a young woman's independence being viewed as a personal insult, met with a grotesque attempt to completely erase her existence. In Robert Reeves, we see how a respected public facade can mask a deeply disturbed, obsessive interior, resulting in the senseless sacrifice of an innocent young wife. In Denise Miller, we witness the devastating path of a chronic jealousy, which ultimately consumed both the life of a dedicated public servant and her own physical and mental well-being. Yet, amid the darkness of these crimes, the dedication of the law enforcement officers, the scientific precision of the forensic teams, and the courage of community members shine brightly. Through their tireless efforts, the truth was unearthed, the false narratives were dismantled, and justice was ultimately served. By understanding these psychological dynamics, society can become more vigilant, recognizing the early warning signs of possessive control and offering support to those in need, ensuring that the light of promise is never again eclipsed by the shadow of obsession. The anatomy of volatile passion and forensic investigation. The human mind possesses a remarkable capacity for devotion, yet when affection curdles into obsession, the consequences can be catastrophic. As we examine the cases before us from the perspective of criminal psychology and meticulous forensic science, we observe a recurring pattern. Individuals driven by deep-seated insecurities, pathologically possessive tendencies, and a desire for control frequently dismantle the very lives they claim to cherish. Through the diligent work of law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and community advocates, these dark acts are systematically brought into the light of justice. The Tears of Little Elm, the case of Denise Miller and Wayne Irby. In the quiet landscape of North Texas, the town of Little Elm and the nearby city of Gainesville became the backdrop for a tragedy that illustrated how quickly a domestic partnership can dissolve into violence. To understand the psychological trajectory of Denise Miller, we must first examine the events of December 11th, 2004. On that tranquil evening, which extended into the early morning hours of the next day, the silence of a local hotel in Gainesville was shattered. At approximately past 4 o'clock in the morning, a night manager received an alarming telephone call from a guest room. The voice on the other end was slurred, disoriented, and clearly in distress. Seeking to ensure the safety of the guest, the manager walked down the corridor to room 147. Upon knocking and receiving no coherent response, the manager discovered the deadbolt was engaged from the inside. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, he summoned the maintenance worker, who used tools to force the door open. Inside the darkened room, the two men made a distressing discovery. Lying on the floor in a crumpled, almost fetal position was a woman, later identified as Denise Miller. The room was in complete disarray. She was bleeding from a single gunshot wound to her head, located just above her eye. Lying on the carpet, beside her was a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun. The manager immediately contacted emergency dispatchers by dialing 911. Within minutes, police officers and emergency medical technicians arrived at the scene. The atmosphere was chaotic as first responders worked rapidly to stabilize the woman and transport her to a nearby trauma center. At the hotel room, investigators began documenting the physical evidence. They noted the presence of alcohol and over-the-counter sleeping medication. Initially, detectives faced two possibilities. Either this was an attempted self-inflicted death, or an assailant had fled the room prior to the arrival of hotel staff. The investigation took a dramatic turn when police linked the identity of Denise Miller to a missing persons report filed 24 hours earlier in the nearby jurisdiction of Little Elm. Not only was Denise missing, but her boyfriend, a 37-year-old police officer named Wayne Irby, had also failed to report for his 6 o'clock morning shift on December 10th, 2004. For a dedicated 6-year veteran who is known to arrive early and take immense pride. In his uniform, such an absence was unprecedented. Red flags were raised across the department. To comprehend the dissolution of this relationship, we must look back to its inception. Denise Swall had grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, where she was known as a popular, vivacious young woman. At 22 years of age, she married her college sweetheart and subsequently gave birth to 2 children, Whitney and Walter. By 1995, however, the marriage had ended in divorce. Seeking a fresh start, Denise relocated her family to the Dallas suburb of Little Elm in the late 1990s. She secured a lucrative position with a liquor distributor, managed her finances prudently, and built a beautiful home for her children. In 2003, Denise answered a knock at her front door. Standing on her porch was Officer Wayne Irby, who had stopped to politely inform her that her garage door had been left open, making her home a potential target for neighborhood thefts. He presented his business card, and the brief encounter left a positive impression on Denise. Wayne was a highly sociable, charismatic officer who was well liked on his beat. It was not long before he returned to invite her to dinner. The courtship progressed rapidly, and the two became exclusive. Wayne was embraced by Denise's children, and on the surface, they appeared to be a stable family unit. However, beneath this polished exterior, deep psychological fractures were forming. Denise possessed an intense fear of abandonment, which manifested as severe jealousy. She frequently accused Wayne of engaging in inappropriate interactions with other women on his beat. Wayne, known as an outgoing personality, denied these accusations, but the constant suspicion eroded their mutual trust. In the spring of 2004, despite their ongoing arguments, the couple attempted to solidify their commitment by purchasing a home together. Living under the same roof, however, only amplified their conflicts. A few months later, Wayne decided the relationship was no longer tenable and moved into a rental home across town. Yet, when Denise lost her employment in November of that year, Wayne's protective instincts led him to reconcile with her so that she and her children would not face housing insecurity. This reconciliation was short-lived. By early December, Wayne had reached a definitive conclusion that he needed to end the relationship permanently. On December 10th, 2004, when Wayne failed to appear at the police station, his partner, Jerry Walker, and Officer James Wynn began a systematic search. They obtained a key to Wayne's rental home from his landlord. Upon entering, they discovered Wayne's cell phone and fanny pack on the kitchen counter, which was highly uncharacteristic for an active officer. Moving down the hallway, Officer Wynn stopped and instructed his partner to halt. Lying face down on the floor was Wayne Irby. He had been killed by a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. The nature of the wound indicated that Wayne had been ambushed and shot from behind, suggesting he never saw his attacker. because his duty belt was found. Hanging in his closet with an empty holster, investigators realized his service. Weapon was missing. A subsequent search of the residence Wayne shared with Denise revealed a handwritten suicide note written by Denise. It expressed a deep sense of despair and fatigue. More tellingly, at Wayne's rental home, investigators discovered a second note on the kitchen island. This note, written in Denise's handwriting, contained a direct confession. "I am sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our mothers." With this evidence, the search for Denise became a critical priority. When she was located in the Gainesville hotel room with a gunshot wound to her head, investigators also discovered Wayne's missing .40 caliber service weapon. Examination of the weapon revealed that Denise had attempted to load the ammunition backward, causing the firearm to jam. Consequently, she had turned to her stepfather's .25 caliber handgun to attempt to end her life. In the hotel room, detectives discovered a third, more extensive note. In this document, Denise claimed that the shooting of Wayne had been an accident and that she had panicked and fled the scene. Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy conducted an interview with Denise at her hospital bedside. Due to the severe trauma to her brain, Denise was disoriented and claimed to have no memory of the events of that fateful night. Her cognitive and motor skills were severely compromised. She was left partially paralyzed and blind in one eye. While some investigators questioned whether this amnesia was a convenient defense strategy, medical professionals confirmed that the physical damage to her frontal lobe could indeed cause significant memory loss. Nevertheless, the legal system must rely on physical evidence and objective facts rather than subjective memory. On January 18, 2005, Denise Miller was charged with first-degree murder. Following 18 months of physical rehabilitation, she was deemed competent to stand trial. The trial commenced on July 10, 2006, at the Denton County Courthouse. The prosecution urged the jury not to let Denise's frail appearance in a wheelchair distract them from the gravity of her actions. They presented the three notes as clear evidence of premeditation and confession. To counter the defense's argument that the shooting was an accident, prosecutors introduced forensic testimony from the state crime laboratory. Testing on the .25 caliber handgun revealed that the trigger required 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to discharge, directly contradicting the theory of an accidental misfire. Furthermore, the prosecution noted that if the shooting had been accidental, a reasonable person would have immediately summoned medical assistance rather than writing confession notes, stealing the victim's service weapon, and fleeing the scene. After less than 1 hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. On July 12, 2006, Denise Miller was sentenced to 62 years in prison. This case serves as a sober reminder of how pathological jealousy can consume an individual, leading them to destroy the life of the person they claim to love, while ultimately dismantling their own. The smoke of betrayal, The case of Tanisha Stewart and Timothy Shepard. The city of Houston, Texas, was the setting for another profound study in criminal psychology and forensic determination. In March of 2007, the disappearance of a promising young college student exposed the horrific lengths to which an obsessive partner will go when denied control. Tanisha Stewart was a 19-year-old freshman at Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. Raised in a challenging neighborhood of Houston, Tanisha was one of 6 children and had lost her father at an early age. Despite these hardships, she excelled academically, possessed an infectious personality, and earned a prestigious scholarship to further her education. In May of 2005, while employed at a local pizza establishment, 17-year-old Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 years of age. Despite the 8-year age difference, Timothy pursued Tanisha persistently. Eventually, she agreed to date him, and the relationship grew serious. Timothy made concerted efforts to ingratiate himself with Tanisha's family, helping with household tasks and electronics. They came to regard him as a member of the family. The dynamic shifted when Tanisha relocated to the university campus, situated approximately 2 hours away from Houston. Surrounded by new peers and intellectual challenges, Tanisha began to develop a strong sense of independence. Recognizing this shift, Timothy grew increasingly possessive. Although he briefly terminated the relationship to pursue a former girlfriend, he quickly regretted the decision and sought a reconciliation. Tanisha agreed to continue dating him, but her focus had clearly broadened. During her spring break in March of 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston. While she spent some time with Timothy, she also made plans to socialize with her friends, including attending a concert featuring the musical artist Beyoncé. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Tanisha's sister, Gayla Taylor, received a call from their mother, who explained that Tanisha had failed to appear for the concert and had not answered her telephone for several days. Recognizing that Tanisha was highly responsible and kept in regular contact, the family filed a missing persons report on Monday, March 19th. Investigators immediately contacted Timothy Shepard, as he was among the last individuals to have seen her. During his initial interview, Timothy was cooperative. He explained that he had picked Tanisha up early on Thursday morning. While in his vehicle, Tanisha received a telephone call from a male college friend named Mark Marks. This call sparked an argument. Timothy admitted to confronting Tanisha about the call once. They arrived at his apartment, but claimed they agreed to sleep and discuss the matter later. The following morning, when he pressed her for details, Tanisha reportedly grew frustrated, refused to discuss her personal life, and walked out of the apartment. Timothy claimed he had not seen her since. Timothy voluntarily granted investigators permission to search his apartment. At that stage, detectives found no obvious physical evidence of foul play or a struggle. Timothy was permitted to leave, and the investigation pivoted to Mark Marks. Mark Marks, a 19-year-old student, was brought in for questioning. He cooperated fully and revealed that he and Tanisha had developed a close relationship. According to Mark, Tanisha was planning to terminate her relationship with Timothy permanently so they could be together exclusively. This revelation provided a powerful motive for Timothy, as his fear of losing control over Tanisha had reached a critical threshold. Furthermore, investigators verified Mark's alibi. He had been attending a gathering on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance, entirely removing him from suspicion. As detectives focused their attention back on Timothy, they began interviewing neighbors at his apartment complex. Several residents reported highly unusual behavior occurring the day after Tanisha vanished. Specifically, Timothy had been operating 2 outdoor grills continuously over the weekend. The smoke was so dense and uncontrolled that neighbors had contacted the fire department. When firefighters arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing a large quantity of meat for an upcoming church gathering of nearly 200 people. One firefighter noted seeing raw meat soaking in a bathtub inside the apartment, which supported Timothy's explanation at the time. However, another neighbor reported a separate, deeply suspicious detail. She had witnessed Timothy pouring an extraordinary amount of bleach onto his patio, so potent that the chemical fumes irritated her eyes. Sensing that Timothy was hiding a dark truth, Tanisha's sister contacted a prominent community activist, Quan Nellex, for assistance. Interestingly, Timothy's family had also reached out to the activist, claiming that the police were attempting to frame Timothy. Quan Nellex arranged a private meeting with Timothy in the bathroom of his apartment, believing the location would prevent any potential surveillance. In that enclosed space, Quan Nellex confronted Timothy directly, asking him to look him in the eye and speak the truth. Under intense psychological pressure, Timothy broke down. He admitted that when Tanisha refused to discuss her relationship with Mark Marks, he flew into a violent rage and strangled her to death as she attempted to leave the apartment. Timothy further claimed that he had placed her body in a dumpster located at the rear of his apartment complex. Quan Nellex immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. Alongside other detectives, they escorted Timothy to the designated dumpster. To their dismay, the dumpster had been recently emptied. Investigators learned that the contents of the dumpster had already been transported to a massive regional landfill. A thorough search of the landfill would cost approximately $500,000, with exceedingly low prospects of recovering any remains. In a display of profound dignity, Tanisha's family requested that the county not expend these public resources on a futile search. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to legal counsel and ceased cooperating with the authorities. To secure a conviction without a body, the prosecution required indisputable physical evidence. Crime scene investigators returned to Timothy's apartment to conduct an exhaustive forensic search. Their diligence yielded critical results. In the kitchen, forensic technicians dismantled the garbage disposal and recovered microscopic bone fragments and tooth enamel. Subsequent laboratory analysis confirmed that the enamel matched Tanisha's dental records. Outside, near the patio where the grills had been operated, investigators located charred bone fragments. The horrifying reality of the crime became clear. Timothy had mutilated and incinerated Tanisha's remains in a desperate attempt to erase all evidence of his deed. The trial of Timothy Shepard commenced on September 29, 2008. The prosecution faced the challenge of proving murder beyond a reasonable doubt using circumstantial and trace forensic evidence.